This video is a commentary about what it means for the Ravens, for Lamar Jackson, for the Ravens fan base as well, for Lamar to be named the MVP for a second time, which is what we can presume is going to happen tonight at the NFL awards ceremony. Everyone expects him to win it for the second time in his career, probably not unanimously like 2019. For me, it's been tough to recall how brilliant much of the 2023 season was for the Ravens offense because of how it finished. Nonetheless, in our first year under Todd Monken, we did a lot of good things. And partially, I want to recap that and show some film that illustrates what Lamar was able to do, or I think helps me make my points better, I should say. Lamar finished, I think, with 24 passing touchdowns, 5 rushing touchdowns. The Ravens went 13-4. And they split 2 playoff games, the second of which is that brutal 17 loss to the Kansas City Chiefs. Before we get to one point about that game, which I will parlay this video into later, I want to illustrate a reason why I think he'll probably be named MVP. Really, multiple reasons. There was a point in the season, late in the season, in fact, where his touchdown passes were talked about constantly by non-Ravens fans, more likely probably by fans of other AFC North teams who just want to run Lamar down, perhaps similar to what Ravens fans do with other teams' quarterbacks, but I haven't seen that dynamic as much. And then that narrative, that discussion point, his touchdown passes, really came crumbling down after the Ravens' Week 11 loss to the Browns, slowly though, week by week. All that Lamar did after that loss to the Browns at home, in his last 6 games, he threw for 1,500 yards, 14 touchdowns against 2 interceptions, also rushed for 350 during that 6-game stretch. And the Ravens locked up the AFC's number 1 seed. 6-0 stretch of wins against the 49ers, Dolphins, Rams, Jags, and Bengals. His completion percentage during that time was actually down compared to the rest of the year, 62%. If his completion percentage had stayed a little bit higher, you're looking at a guy who would have been 70%, which he stayed around 70% completion percentage for a little over half of the year. To me, is a pretty incredible run for the team because that was a gauntlet of games that so many people pointed to. That 5-game stretch to finish the year, we want to finish 3-2. Some people, it's okay if we go 2-3. Well, all the Ravens did was go 6-0. Of course, we had to lose the Browns game to fix certain things offensively. Even in that 6-game stretch, only 1 game was decided by less than 10 points. That's a pretty unique situation. From the standpoint of that run for Lamar, statistically, that locked him up for MVP, as well as the 5-touchdown performance against the Dolphins in Week 17. There's other deserving guys for MVP, and personally, I wouldn't have a problem who actually wins the award. But let's look at it this way. The only guys nominated are on winning teams, all Super Bowl contenders, really. I'm sure that some people would say that the Cowboys are not actual Super Bowl contenders. Lamar's impact across multiple schemes, concepts, is the difference maker to me in terms of how he impacts the game and why he's going to win his second MVP. Some of the things that you can use to relay information about Lamar have changed over the years, and the discussion points as well have been destroyed perhaps year by year, but certainly in 2023. Number one, he can't throw outside the numbers, or he can't throw near the sidelines. That dynamic changed a little bit in 2022, but it got laid to waste this year with a new offense for real. Not only was Lamar able to scramble to punish defenses at times if the middle of the field was covered, but he was also able to utilize a number of receivers and tight ends over the course of the year. And while doing so, he accomplished 2 disparate tasks simultaneously. So what I mean by that is Lamar had the most passing attempts in his career in 2023, 457. In the 16 games, that averages out to 28 passing attempts per game. At the same time that he's throwing more, at least for him, 28 attempts a game is the highest. He had his highest completion percentage ever at 67%. And again, he was hovering at or just below the 70% barrier for the better part of the first 9 or 10 games. For those 2 things to happen at the same time, and what I mean by that is more passes per game and a higher completion percentage, I think it's a pretty good indicator that not only is he improving with certain things with this offense, but that the offense has long-term success potential even though the ending was quite poor. And I'll show some film and discuss that in a little bit more detail later. The following guys all missed time in 2023, and yet the offense continued to flow and produce at a high rate. Mark Andrews, obviously, even though he returned. OBJ, Bateman both missed some time early in the year. Keaton Mitchell went out for the season, and then J.K. Dobbins went down in week 1. While all of those things happened, throwing the football more, completing a higher percentage of his passes, and multiple guys going down, including Linderbaum and Stanley missing parts of the first 4 weeks, Lamar's interception rate is the lowest it's been since 2019, 1.5%. I know I'm reading out a lot of data to you and not really breaking down plays, but I think that this is kind of important. His yards per attempt are also the highest ever. I'm not talking about the adjusted yards per attempt, excuse me. I'm talking about the actual yards per attempt, 8.0. Simply put, for me, even though the ending was very ugly, there are a lot of arrows that are pointing up, and people must recognize it because he gained an All-Pro designation again. Also, this is his second highest quarterback rating, only behind, of course, 2019. I'm talking about the actual quarterback rating, the one that's been around for decades, not QBR or whatever new statistic that's been forced on people in the last couple of years. It's also, for me at least, worth remembering that prior to we're going to enter draft season here soon, after the Super Bowl probably, Lamar went through a ridiculous pre-draft process whereby he was asked about switching positions, and it was openly discussed, even reporters asking him questions in front of other people. And as someone who just loves the game of football, obviously a Ravens fan, I was pissed off listening to those. I'm talking about 2018, early 2018, prior to the draft. Listening to reporters and even people on social media say that he should switch positions, even before he was on our team, bothered me. And now to see him on the other end of it, one of only, I think, 11 people to win multiple MVPs. He'll join the ranks of Jim Brown, Joe Montana, Tom Brady, Peyton Manning, who's won 5, and Aaron Rodgers, who's won 4. Like I said, I believe he's the 11th player to win multiple Associated Press MVP awards. I think Fox just named him their MVP yesterday. On many of these plays that you're seeing, yes, there's no pressure on Lamar, or he only has to escape one guy, which he can do. But I think these plays kind of illustrate why teams decide to blitz Lamar at times. You can't let him have time. You can't let him have time to find open wide receivers or choose when he wants to scramble out of the pocket. In my opinion, and I've said this for the better part of 2 years, the 4-man rush against Lamar, you're signing up for your own demise. I'll have more on that concept, on that thought later on, to be honest with you, because I think that the Ravens have some work to do, clearly, to adjust to that reality. If we're going to throw the ball a lot, and look, 28 times a game is not very high compared to some other teams at all. But if we're going to throw the ball a lot, then you can expect that strategy of bringing pressure to force the ball out of Lamar's hands. You can expect that to continue. It's just the right tactical decision because it allows the defense to limit our offense's options. It allows them to kind of have the chalk last, if you will, and at least choose what they get beat by. All right, so on that note, in terms of tactical decisions, and I feel like I'm pulling a bait and switch here, my apologies for that. This is something that I wanted to produce before, really before the Super Bowl. It's probably overdue at this point. I would be remiss if I didn't mention how poor I think the play calling was in the Chiefs game, and I think we've talked about it ad nauseum, many people at this point. So what I wanted to do, rather than just talk about it, was display concepts, some successful concepts that we used in 2023, and we used against the Chiefs, at least 2 of them here, that were successful and just never showed up again against the Chiefs defense that, on rewatch looks like one that we're very capable of blocking. We had so few run plays that you really can't say one thing worked or didn't work because we didn't even find out. You have Lamar on the 4th down, unbalanced power for 21 yards that I showed you, and then now Gus, this is the second time, 15 yards, power into the boundary out of 21 personnel. And that's it. I believe it was Brett Coleman, maybe someone else who does film study stuff, that prior to the AFC Championship game talked about how Kansas City's defense was set up to get beat by gap scheme runs. And look, power, the two plays I've just showed you here, is the ultimate gap scheme run. It's down kick with a backside guard pulling and leading through the gap, leading through the rush lane. We've had that and multiple other successful run concepts that we used to lead the league in rushing. We just left them on the sideline. It's maddening to me. Two of the ones that I think is the most confusing that we never used, I'll show you here. I call it jet dive. Okay, I'll show you a couple of illustrations of it. So you got jet motion to one side, and then the running back going opposite that. And here's why I think this one is such a poor choice for us to leave out of the game plan, because it's got oppositional flow. It's got split flow. So you have the threat of the jet, which I don't think is ever going to occur to a condensed side. But in any case, the threat of the jet going to the offense's left, defense's right, and then the running back with the zone steps and flow in the opposite direction. Diametrically opposed, split flow, if you will. We didn't have enough conflict created at all to allow the defense to do some of the things you're seeing here, which is step out to deal with the sweep and then kind of isolate people in here for our offensive line to deal with. None of that. The game plan, even on third rewatch at this point, looks extremely confusing and frustrating to me. Another example of what I'm talking about, the jet dive, this one against Cleveland in week 4. We spent so much time in the shotgun where the ball is just right there to be seen. Lamar's a stationary target. They kind of know where he's going to be at in terms of the blitz. Yeah, he's going to move off that point because he's athletic. Really confusing to me why we didn't run this at all against the Chiefs. Another one you can probably guess, the one that I'm going to refer to, is QB counter read or bash. When we're struggling on offense, this is one of the things that I feel like you can go to. This is Zay's touchdown late in the fourth quarter against the Chargers. Some people think he shouldn't have scored. He should have. That's not the point here. The point is, it is, again, creating opposite or split flow. It's a simple concept, whereby you're forcing the defense to expand horizontally with the threat of the sweep. And in this case, another thing I love about it is we're following Gus Edwards away from Patrick Ricard used as a blocker. Now, if Lamar keeps this, then Lamar is going to keep it behind the pulling guards, and he's going to go to the side where Patrick Ricard is. But it gives us options and forces the defense to defend both sides of the formation. I didn't think we were doing that at all by dropping back and throwing. That's been covered extremely well. It's just so disappointing that I felt like I had to show the play concepts that we didn't use, whereby my words, the things I'm saying, stand as secondary, because these are concepts that we used repeatedly in 2023 in a successful manner as well. And I do wonder this. Some of the concepts we chose not to utilize are ones that are holdover concepts from 2021 and 2022. I almost wonder if Greg Roman was like, okay, we're struggling here offensively. I'm going to go to what I know and not what I've kept from the previous offensive staff. Or, if you want to call it, some of the things that Harbaugh has. This is a play from 2022 on the road against Tampa Bay, the exact same play that Zay scored on against the Chargers. So that's why I bring that up to illustrate it. Combine it with QB counter read. There's no flow motion here. Now you have running back leading out into the flats, and then potential to give the football again, counter flow with the pulling right guard and right tackle. Lamar in this situation keeps it. Thinks he could get more yards. My point is, we didn't use these at all. I don't understand why. And I don't think on the third, fourth, fifth, or sixth rewatch I'll ever understand it. I'm sure you don't either. One element that is really interesting to think about, and unfortunately that's all we have time to do right now prior to the Super Bowl, is the loss of Keaton Mitchell. Now, he's not on any of these two plays here, but you're seeing examples of QB counter read, bash being run. In this case, being run with a wide receiver. This is actually QB power read, but you see the same dynamic. A running back out leading, and then this was a huge play on a third down, if I recall correctly. This is 2nd and 13, where Bateman gets 18 yards. We've never once come back to that in the season at all. I wonder why we didn't look at being somewhat abnormal or unusual, meaning don't run that with Zay, run it with someone who they don't think we're going to hand the ball off to. Finally, another play that's very similar to the one I just showed you that we did run one time. I'm not sure why we ran it more, is counter option out of the pistol. And this is one of my favorite plays. It's borderline unstoppable, to be honest with you. I covered this in another video. I think you get a really poor job by Isaiah Likely on this, but Mark Andrews is going to arc release up to the frontside inside linebacker. Likely is going to arc release out to the frontside safety, and the counter play is going away from that flow. So the center, Linderbaum, and the left tackle are pulling, and the running back's path is opposite of where those two arc releases are going. So what I'm describing is running back to this side, quarterback potentially keeping it to the opposite side, split flow, meaning one threat to one side of the formation, one threat to the other. I do think that the loss of Keaton Mitchell had more impact than any of us really talked about leading into that game, myself included, because we did keep on winning after he went down. But this play is something that was foundational in our offense prior to 2023. We retained it in this season under Monken, but when we were stressed, when we were under duress against the Chiefs, we went to it one time for 5 yards and never came back. It's going to be a difficult offseason to talk about our offense in a positive light. And even though Lamar had a fantastic or spectacular season, we just did not play football. Let me say that again, actually, a better way. We did not choose to play football in the manner that we won so many games in 2023, and that's going to be difficult to let go of from a Todd Monken perspective. And the shame of it is that Lamar didn't play well that day either, and I know some of you guys don't like me saying that, but that's the reality. The shame of it is he had a spectacular year, and on some level it gets wasted in terms of how he'll be evaluated as a Super Bowl winning quarterback, which he will do eventually, I believe. There's so much good film of him making decisions, finding open guys this year, moving from one read to the other, getting the ball to multiple targets. The 67% completion percentage, again, is top 10 in the league. It's 8th in the league, tied with Patrick Mahomes, just behind Jared Goff, I believe. The league leader was Jake Browning, who had a significantly less number of attempts because he came on in relief of Joe Burrow after Burrow went out for the season. My point is, to see us become one-dimensional by our own choosing still remains confusing, and it gets more difficult to comprehend each time I rewatch the game, which at this point I've done 3 times to force myself to hopefully understand what the play calling mentality was, and I still can't gather it. In any case, I hope you'll enjoy watching Lamar get the MVP tonight, if that is indeed what occurs. He certainly is deserving, in my opinion. That was the point of the video. Being someone who has a long memory, thinking back to what he had to put up with before the draft in 2018, after our loss in the playoffs to the Chargers in 2018, after our divisional loss at home to the Titans in 2019, and seeing him go through this once again, it's very difficult for any of us to watch. Nonetheless, we've got a guy that we know we can win a lot of football games with, and someone that players across the league recognize is one of the best in the league. I appreciate you guys' time, man. If you think other Ravens fans would enjoy this commentary / film study look at Lamar's season, and one of the things we were very remiss in not attacking against the Chiefs in the AFC title game, then please consider grabbing a link to this video, sharing it out on social media so other Ravens fans can enjoy this content as well.